Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us. It's great to have you with us. Apologies for the slight delay to the schedule today, but we're really pleased to welcome Nathaniel Wade, who is co-founder of Wakuda. So really pleased to have Nathaniel with us. Now, this is the first of two of our e-commerce bootcamp sessions, which we're running here today at Retail Fest. And over the last year, we've been talking with lots of retailers about what they're finding most difficult and challenging in their businesses. And without a doubt, everybody has said that the area that they'd really like to improve is their online offering. And obviously, as we know, over the last couple of years, everyone's been faced with lots of challenge thanks to the pandemic, largely, forcing many consumers to go online. And so as a consequence, today we're going to be speaking with two experts who have ventured online and are going to be here to share their top tips and the strategies that they've been using to really get noticed on the web, to set up their platform, to channel themselves through social media and best get attention. And this is an interactive session, so please do take the opportunity to ask Nathaniel any questions that you would like. We want to run it as a really kind of spontaneous dialogue, and Nathaniel's got lots of ideas and experience. So we'll get chatting. If you want to ask anything, please put up your hand and we'll try to factor in your thoughts and questions as well. So first of all, Nathaniel, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about Wakuda, which in itself has been a startup at a very challenging time in the market, as we've just said. So tell us all about it.
Yeah, so Wakuda is an online marketplace to discover kind of unique cultural gifts and products from UK black-owned brands. We launched in September 2020, and we really wanted to help to spotlight black-owned businesses in the UK, and we had always struggled to find products that really represented us and our cultures. So this myself and my co-founder, and we decided to do something about it. So my background is actually engineering operations, which came in pretty handy when it came to the e-commerce, more strategic side of things, and Albert's is digital marketing. So where we are now, we've got about 300 vendors listed on the marketplace, and yeah, we've been building our brand, and we've been doing pretty well at it, basically.
So when did you start exactly?
So we launched September 2020, and obviously we're a digitally native brand in that we launched online and grew our presence both via social media and through organic means like via SEO, etc.
Excellent. And so tell us a little bit about how you got started, because you didn't have the benefit of being able to put 24 hours a day into it, did you? You had a day job to tackle as well. So how did you get set up online then?
So we were very constrained in terms of like time and resources as a startup. And because we didn't have the opportunity to come to events like this and other in-person events to reach out to vendors individually, we had to very much scour the internet and social media in order to find the first businesses to start on our marketplace, which was pretty effective, to be fair, because we used various methods from like paid social to just generally like reaching out to people via social media and started like building our brand that way.
But it's a difficult thing, isn't it, to come into a marketplace which is already there, in a sense. I mean, obviously you're collating everything and you found a really effective way of bringing together those 300 brands so that people can better and more easily find what they're looking for. But how did you go about getting noticed?
So press was a huge thing for us. We positioned ourselves quite strategically because of what we were doing, and it was shortly after the death of George Floyd, and we decided there was a lot of there was a shift in awareness around supporting black-owned businesses, and we very much used that as a channel and drove people to our platform who wanted to kind of spend with impact and discover these businesses who generally struggle to gain the same kind of brand awareness as their counterparts, basically. And we use press to do that and to really galvanize that kind of support.
So in terms of one first top tip then, if you're trying to start an online business and you really want to get seen, you're basically saying press is the way forward, is that right?
Press was effective for us. It was one of the channels. I feel like what works for one person might not necessarily work for another brand, but I think it's about testing and seeing what works best for you. I think even with regards to social media, we were on quite a few platforms to start with, which was just us kind of working out which one works for us. And then we kind of leaned out of the ones that didn't work and more focused our time on the ones that did work. So I think an important part is to kind of work out where your audience is. And once you've done that, then lean into that and spend a lot more time there.
So from what you've said to me already in our conversations leading up to today, it seems to be very much an evolution, the way you're viewing your journey online. Obviously, the market is always changing, it's always moving. Consumers are forever looking for something fresh and different. And the way in which you then communicate with your customers needs to be different depending on what they are facing from year to year. So how have you managed that? And I'm thinking specifically about the level of energy that you've had to put in to setting up your online brand. Have you found that it's taking less time in order to make the system as effective as possible for you to sell your wares online these days, as opposed to when you started? Was there a colossal amount of energy at the beginning and now it's beginning to taper off and flow? Or are you still having to put the same level of energy in as you did at the outset?
So I'd say the same level of energy, but our focus is on different things. So when we first started, a lot of our efforts were spent on making sure the system was set up right, was making sure our processes and functions were working as they should. Now it's a lot more around customer acquisition and how we're actually continuing to build a brand. So a lot of the operational stuff is kind of there now. It's always changing, and we're always getting feedback from our customers and vendors in like how we can better the platform. That's not going to change. But in terms of where our time is now spent, the majority is on like that kind of customer acquisition side and how we continue to drive demand and build the kind of brand and brand awareness.
Okay, that's great advice. So obviously the title of this session was really about how to get your systems and processes right when you're setting up online. And I think anyone who's tried to do on an online push from the very beginning will attest to the fact that it's a very difficult thing to do, because you can often feel as if you're diving into the dark. There's too many options in a way. Tell us a little bit about how you got going with that. Did you do it all in-house, or did you outsource at all? And which bits did you rely on others for?
So we went through an interesting journey because neither of our backgrounds is tech specifically. So when it came to building the platform, because it was a marketplace, it's a bit more bespoke kind of approach was needed. But we essentially got an off-the-shelf, so we built a platform on WordPress. We got an off-the-shelf plugin called Doken, which integrated with WooCommerce. And we then used an external developer to add more of the kind of custom changes to make the platform how we wanted it and our kind of vision, which a caveat to that is that what we didn't do was speak enough with our users to really work out what they really wanted. So some of the things that we did, when we spoke to kind of vendors around like 6 months down the line, they're actually, oh, no, we don't really want that, or this would be a bit better like this. So I think part of it, whatever you do, it's about speaking to customers, or whether it's a marketplace, vendors, continuously, because their kind of sentiments and views always change, and you find that you have different people using the platform and stuff. So it's always good to kind of have that conversation. In terms of our approach, so yeah, we got a external developer to kind of help support us to implement the changes. And then just continuously like iterated around that and just made changes where required.
And is that still going on now?
Still going on now.
You're still using the same systems?
Yeah. Still going on now. We're using the same systems, but we've changed quite a bit, and we've kind of like, we use like different integrations now. For example, like one thing that we did, we changed from using MailChimp, which is like an email provider, to using Klaviyo, because we found a lot more kind of suited to our use case kind of thing. But generally, it's been less so changing the systems, but more utilizing them a bit differently, I guess.
Yes, fantastic. And so as the platform has been growing, you've had many more vendors coming in, which is fantastic news, and presumably that will continue as you continue to expand. How have you found the most effective means of actually keeping in touch with all of your vendors? It's difficult when you get to the levels of 300, isn't it? Particularly when there's only two founders there.
So, and one thing that we actually did, which was a huge mistake to start with, was we tried to automate too much with regards to like vendor onboarding, and it very much kind of went. We could have someone join the platform, and we didn't really know their story. We didn't really know kind of where they were in terms of being in the digital space and how much kind of support they would need with regards to kind of like the onboarding process, and it led to churn when it came to onboarding vendors, because a lot kind of didn't or needed a bit more support to kind of get started on the platform, but also it led to a lot of businesses that maybe weren't particularly right for the platform, and so with that we changed our approach and we very much made it very manual. So we was having conversations with vendors, like jumping on a call, really understanding what their business was and how we could actually work together and how we saw their business and Wakuda kind of working together. But saying that, we did have, and we still do have, automated kind of email flows around that. So when it comes to onboarding them onto the platform, we have emails around how they set up their shipping, how best to write product descriptions, and the more kind of SEO side of things, and how to set up their business right, what kind of visuals are needed, product photography tips, etc. And we found that that's really helped, but we still supplement that with our kind of personal support in order to really get them off to the best start. And it's so key for us to like remain close with the vendors as well.
It's a delicate balance, isn't
Very.
it? Particularly as you say, you automated too much at the beginning of the vendors. And have you had the same issues on the customer side? Is there more that you can automate there to help the process along of purchasing?
We're pretty set when it comes to customers, and we have been from the start. There's always like tweaks and changes that are made, but we've always kind of had our email automations from if they sign up and they do buy, if they sign up and they don't buy, they'll receive different kind of comms from us, and that's all automated, which obviously saves a huge amount of time. Abandoned car customer flows, like all of that kind of stuff has been set up for since we joined Klaviyo, which was I think like July last year maybe. So customers have been quite fine. Obviously, when there's customer issues, you're always going to kind of need to do that manually to an extent.
So there's quite a pushback at the moment that we're seeing in the market from certain retailers who perhaps already have a physical presence and maybe have dabbled with online and are now thinking everybody actually is going back to physical land. Do we need to bother with online? What would your message be, given that obviously you are exclusively online? What's the online market really like? Is it worth launching into at this stage? Is it something that's feasible? Or would you be beset with difficulties trying to do it at this point?
Say that again, sorry?
Would you be beset with difficulties if you tried to get in at this point?
No, I think there is space online. You're going to reach a huge untapped audience, obviously, if you approach it the right way. I think there is the kind of like almost like a polarized view where it's like it's online or offline. I feel like you need to very much take a hybrid approach. It's where we're at. So offline, is definitely a very different channel, and you're going to have a lot of different customers and different like customer profiles, and that's the same with online. So I think you don't have to pick, and it's very much worth being in the online space because you're going to reach a much larger consumer base that you're not going to typically be able to access offline.
So at this point, are there any questions from the audience? Who here has some kind of online presence for their company at the moment? Are you all finding that it's running smoothly? Are there any observations?
Was there a certain tipping point in terms of your online presence for customers when you were hitting kind of like traffic at a certain level that you were really getting the most, like conversions started happening more often than before?
I wouldn't say there was necessarily like a tipping point in terms of traffic. One thing we've always done is from literally when we just had like, I don't know, a 1,000 visitors kind of visiting the site, was work out what we needed to do to move as many of them to the kind of the next stage. So when we first started, there were, and this is why it's important to kind of speak to your kind of customers, potential customers, failed customers as well, because working out why they've abandoned at certain points is really important. And it's insightful as well. And so one of the things that we kind of came across was shipping costs. Because we're a multi-vendor marketplace, everyone has different shipping fees. So for example, you could have 3 different vendors that our customer's gone to that each have a £3 shipping fee, which will lead the customer at the end with a £9 shipping cost, which typically they were finding out at the end of the process. So we were getting a lot of abandoned carts at a certain point with a certain amount of vendors that were there. So it was kind of like looking into that. And this wasn't when we had a huge amount, but it was just, a huge amount of visitors, but it was just about understanding their journey and working out what you can do to kind of make that better, whether it's make it more transparent, the shipping costs, which is what we did, or whether it's just making them feel kind of safer for like buying through your platform, because that was another kind of key part that we were kind of. So one thing as well was that we did like post-purchase surveys to really kind of understand what people's sentiments were like about Wakuda, which was kind of problematic because we're finding information out from people who have purchased from the platform, whereas it's a lot more valuable to obviously find out information from people who haven't purchased from the platform, but they're kind of harder to find, right? But regardless, it's a learning. And does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
No, okay.
Just a follow-on question from that. Did you use any kind of processes or tools to give you that information about the people that were on your website and browsing? And
Yeah. So we use something called Hotjar, which provides like heat maps of your website, and that was pretty useful, I think. And also like Google Analytics, which we use for various things, so like seeing what people are actually kind of searching when they come to the platform, and generally seeing how people are navigating, how people are entering, and where they're kind of exiting. And through that, a lot of the times it's quite obvious what the reason was for them exiting or bouncing or whatever. So I think Google Analytics has been our main kind of research tool to kind of work out what people are doing and like why they're potentially doing it. Cool.
Hi, you touched upon target audience. Before you launched your company, what kind of methods did you use to get to know your audience, or which one did you think was most effective? Because I know with Google Analytics you can kind of know who is visiting your website, but prior to that, did you do any research?
So what we did, ended up doing customer interviews on both the customer side and the vendor side, so potential customers and vendors on our platform, to really kind of work out, like we had this issue, but like, do other people kind of have the issue finding these products and items? And then it was through that where we kind of work out, okay, what does this need to look like? And then we kind of built off of that. I feel like there was more that we could have done at that stage, but obviously hindsight is 20/20 vision, so you don't know what you don't know. And then what we also did was October last year, we did interviews with our customers and vendors to really, because obviously Google Analytics and stuff gives you a certain amount of information, but nothing beats that kind of first party information, like, so you having a conversation with that customer to why are you here? Why have you bought from us? What can we do that's better? What else is going on in your life? What type of person are you? And then we use that to then build like customer personas and then work out, okay, if we go here, we're likely to find, and I mean physically and digitally, if we go here, we're going to probably see a lot of our potential customers or target customers. Okay, we can build a potential partnership with this brand, and there's like a lot of synergies here. But those conversations with the users were critical to like working all of that out.
That's a
that
really,
cool?
really good point, isn't it? You need to keep close to what your
Massively.
customers are actually thinking, and you can't necessarily just tell it from the buying habits, can
No,
you? So
not at all.
how often do you poll them?
Not enough. So we quarterly, obviously we're time is finite and it's a massive factor in that. But it's quarterly. But what we've done is we've decided to focus on certain segments. So because we can't just go and interview all of our customers, we decide, okay, we're going to interview customers that have made this amount of purchases within this kind of time frame, and then we've kind of done it that way because obviously the customers that purchase either the largest amounts or most frequently, we want more of them, so we need to kind of know more about them. So that's kind of like the approach that we've taken to it.
Excellent. I mean, you hit upon a really important point again, time, which is always a tricky thing, both at the outset, but as you say, as you want to keep expanding, so the amount of time and resource that you need to put into your online offering is always just ahead of where you are. So what's your long-term kind of strategy for expansion online? Will it require bringing in more members of staff to manage different aspects, or is it more automation or a mixture of the two?
Definitely a mixture of the two. I think with one of the other things that we did wrong as well, also did wrong, but that was a mistake, was we outsourced our social media. So we had an approach. We tried to, again, I think it's probably me, I'm quite operations orientated, so let's try to automate as much as possible, whether it's me or whether it's like outsourcing someone in. And we outsourced our social media, which is incredibly difficult to do when someone isn't a part of your company, who doesn't necessarily have the same tone of voice, like they haven't got the same tone of voice as your brand as you do. Only you know your brand like you do. So we tried that. And so also, I suppose one of the things I would also say is try things, because what works or didn't work for us could work for other people. What was your question again, sorry?
What do you envisage in terms of
Oh, yeah, that was it.
upscaling? Yeah.
So we'll definitely, it will be a mixture between automating more, but then also less so bringing in people purely for process, but more because of expertise that we don't have in-house that we want to kind of drill down on more. So like one of the things that we don't have expertise in, but we know how to do is SEO. So we've got a certain amount of SEO knowledge. So that's been fine to get us to here. But in order to get us to the next level, we need to kind of bring in expertise basically for that. So that's going to be our approach kind of moving forward.
I mean, from everything that you're saying, it sounds as if you just have to put yourself out there and be brave. And if you don't know the answers, it's no bad thing. You can, get partners and allies to kind of help you to move everything along. So really many congratulations for everything that you and your business partner have achieved so far. As we wrap up, I know you're going to be around for a little while, aren't you, Nathaniel?
Yeah,
so
sure.
if anyone wants to come and ask Nathaniel some in-depth questions about exactly how online works for Wakuda, please do. But it's great to get a bit of an insight into everything that you've achieved. And many congratulations and good luck on the next bit of the journey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Excellent.